Thanks for joining me for another episode of Connected. Today is near and dear to me. We're talking about marketing and marketing technology with who better than Simon Gatenby, who has led a two decades long career in marketing technology and marketing leadership within some of the largest gaming operators in the industry. He's seen it from end to end, from customer acquisition to retention to reactivation to data, all aspects of it. We talk a lot about all those things and what the future holds, how AI is being used today and what we can look forward to in terms of marketing technology in 2026. If you're running a gaming business, and if you're watching this, chances are you know how important marketing and the efficiency of your marketing is to the success of your business. And this is an episode you won't want to miss. So join me, Simon Gatenby. We're talking marketing technology today on Connected. Simon, thank you so much for joining me. It's great when we have somebody that we can have on Connected who's actually in Gibraltar, which is, it's great to do these things live. Gibraltar's HQ for Pragmatic. So good to have you here.
Thank you, Ashley.
This is close to my heart to be talking about marketing technology because I spent a lot of my career in marketing. And in the provision of our platform, once everything is set up and running, one of the biggest areas aside from game vendor integrations is marketing technology integrations. Think just to support the acquisition funnel or the yield from a player post-acquisition. And, we see operators at all different scales, small scale new brands and new markets to large scale enterprise customers. And the technology demands of the business may differ at different scales in the journey of your business, but it's effectively, this is a marketing business, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Yeah, I think gambling and gaming is a combination of product historically, but that is becoming more and more commoditized. And if you look at the sportsbook in the UK, for example, it's hard to differentiate between the product features that they have and marketing. And therefore, the marketing story over time has become increasingly important as you try and stand out, as the product element of your proposition stands out less, and the marketing element and the engagement becomes much, much more important. And technology obviously has a big part to play in that and how you use technology to engage your players.
How big a part? I mean, if you were to say the technology choices that operators make, how much do they define the trajectory of the business?
So I think as a card-carrying marketeer, there's going to be some bias in my answer. I think
that's what you're here for.
Yeah, exactly. So I think some of the products, if you have an outstanding differentiated product feature, that can be the killer component, and marketing can potentially play no part in that. So, early on when people didn't have BetBoost, but one brand did, that sometimes can be enough. As I say, nowadays, as things get more commoditized, it becomes a bigger and bigger part of the brand. A bigger and bigger part of the commercial enterprise. And if you aren't activating that brand, if you aren't informing people with contextual relevance in a way that's relevant and personal to them, then what will happen is that the competition will steal your thunder. So, examples in sports betting, the guy who gets there first when your first goal scorer bet is settled is likely the guy to convert you, because that's a highly contextual message at a moment. When you've got money in your account, your bet's just won, you're happy, you can re-engage the customer to play again. So in those kind of environments, that kind of engagement really matters. The other bit, and why MarTech is so important, is that the gambling industry, and anybody who watches a football game will know this, spends an extraordinary sum of money on marketing. And it is so competitive now that getting the most efficiency out of your marketing, especially in your paid media, becomes a commercial advantage, because the better you are at it, the more of it you can do. And brands, historically would be running at margins of, for every £1 of marketing they spent in a year, they get £3 back. Nowadays, the big operators, they're operating at longer than 1 year paybacks on their marketing. So if a big part of your budget is marketing, and for all of the major players, it's huge, then how good you are at doing that is a commercial advantage.
So let's take a step back for a second, because you're in responding there, you're talking about different stages of the customer journey.
Yeah.
So maybe let's define terms a bit first. When we talk about marketing technology, going through the life cycle of a customer from before they've even
Yeah.
clicked to respond to the brand. What do we mean by MarTech at pre-acquisition?
Yeah.
What do we mean throughout the acquisition funnel? And what do we mean during the customer life cycle with the operator?
Sure. No, good question. So I wouldn't be a marketeer if I didn't refer to the funnel. All right. So let's just talk about the marketing funnel. So the top end, if you're a brand new brand, your first job is to make people aware of it. So how do I get people to find out about my brand? Now, there's one way you can do that. You can put it out on the telly, but you better have deep pockets in the modern era if you're going to do that. And increasingly, as digital consumption takes over from traditional broadcast media, that becomes a less and less viable answer if you're starting up. So understanding how you can reach out to your consumers to make people initially aware of your brand and your proposition is the first job of any business. And MarTech has a big role to play in how you do that, both in terms of how you integrate to the platforms where people are, the YouTubes, the Metas of this world, the digital medias, all of those kind of things. But also what you say when you get there, because you are now able to be much more specific and addressable to get to your target audiences in an efficient way than you were 20 years ago. So if that's the first job, is make people aware of your brand, once they've got that first click and arrive on your site, your job at that point is basically to convert them into a paying customer. And the experience when they arrive in your site can significantly influence your ability to convert. And again, if we're going to take the MarTech landscape on it, number one, the product elements of things like your page load time, they have a significant input on the price you will pay in your Google advertising stack. So if your competition has a slow loading desktop-only landing page, they will probably pay 3 times what you would pay if you have a fast-loading, mobile-friendly landing page on the first experience. So there's the cost element of that, but then there's the experiential element of that in terms of how you deploy what you put on that first experience. So if I am coming from a click on a sports betting website search and I land on a bingo page, people disappear. If you can tailor that experience to the content of the search terms that you've clicked, for example, which is infinitely possible, and you make that first landing page hyper relevant to what you've just clicked on, then you've got a higher chance of conversion. Again, that can have a really big influence on the price that you pay to activate on an individual customer level.
And I guess at that real top end of the funnel, there's marketing technology that's entirely within the operator's control to have integrated and implemented. And then there's marketing technology that's in the media partners' domain about how they can target and retarget your campaign, what they can do dynamically, what metadata they can send to you to dynamically change what you're showing that customer.
Yeah.
So I suppose marketing channel selection has an element of marketing technology capabilities of the media partner that you're investing your budget with.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And if you take Meta, for example, they have a way of interfacing with them. It used to be called CAPI, which is basically how you pass signals data being an event that you registered that the customer has either clicked on your page or registered or whatever back to the platform. Your ability to integrate and match that will significantly influence your ability to understand the effectiveness of your campaign and the play values you're getting. So yeah, MarTech plays a role in that. I think just extracting out a level, there is a degree to which the bigger you get, the more complicated and expensive this problem becomes. So even if you're a small startup operator with not big marketing budgets, to deploy the first elements of the MarTech journey at the top of the funnel nowadays isn't nearly as expensive or complicated as it used to be. So the partners have got good at allowing you to integrate effectively and use some really sophisticated tools at their end to get to the customers that you want. These, Facebook nowadays is pretty much self-learning in terms of marketing conversion data, and it will help you show ads to converting customers without you integrating anything except the signals data, because Facebook needs to know when you've actually converted. And Google's the same, and a lot of the other display media partners have got that as well. So there's a huge amount of sophistication available to an operator in the top end of the marketing funnel to do some quite sophisticated personalization and conversion rate optimization. But yeah, back to your initial question, as you come down the funnel, then you've got the first acquisition, and then it's about technology that allows you to manage engagement. And typically, 10 years ago, this was just about sending regular emails, and it's still a part of most operators' journey is to have a CRM function that just blasts out emails. But much more now, this is about genuine multi-channel engagement, both on and off the app. What do I mean by that? The marketing tech infrastructure, if you've got it right, will run interventions in the customer journey, and they should be delightful interventions. You don't want to keep putting pop-ups there, but if you've got people who have had 6 losing spins, right, the ability to just do a gentle overlay to say, bad luck, mate, is, here's a 7th losing spin, is a MarTech problem. It's also a propositioning problem, but it's a MarTech problem to be able to execute on that journey. And if the customers have gone off the platform, the way that you get them back is increasingly sophisticated. So, 10 years ago, you rely on sending a static email to say, Ash, I haven't seen you for a week, come back and play. Nowadays, you'll be using a combination of reaches out to the customer to bring them back that will include the traditional channels that you use for acquisition, like paid media. So there is no reason I can't reach out to you as an existing customer on your paid media channels when you're just browsing Facebook. But the sophistication with which you do it on email and SMS and push notifications is much more challenging than it used to be. I have to now talk to you if I want to convert. I'll have to use language like Mo Salah's scored, odds of it, he's scored twice in 6 of the last 15 games, odds of converting, odds on the scoring again are 4-1, whatever. If you think about what that hyper-personalized message is in the spirit of that nature, I have had to integrate not just the trigger point that says Ash is available for the bet, but I've had to solve for the content as well. And the content is a combination of market availability, so the marketing system just scanning the market availability out there, statistically relevant content, so integrating with somebody like Opta, who will bring in the fact that Mo Salah has scored twice in his last 15 games, and then an integration to the odds system that says the new odds are now this, and then finally a click through from that straight to the event page, not just on the sports page, to get them to the moment when they can place that bet. So I've just described like the other end of the spectrum, and hopefully it's giving a feeling for what MarTech is, which is solving a problem across 4 disciplines, but it requires a lot of integration and a lot of thought. And these things are only really applicable when you've reached a certain scale. So I've gone from, mentally what I've done there is I've gone from a position at the start of a brand's journey when they're just trying to acquire sophisticatedly and, paint with a picture of how MarTech plays in that, but also right at the end of the journey when you're trying to re-engage or reactivate customers. MarTech has a role to play in that and to bring customers back. And it just depends on where you are in your brand life cycle, what your strategy is, as to the importance of where to play.
Okay, so a couple of thoughts there. Let me check one thing with you first is if I'm going to assess and aim to upgrade my business's entire approach to marketing technology to improve the efficiency of my marketing. Is there a particular place in the customer life cycle that you think the effort is best first invested? I would think top of the funnel has the highest, a 5% increase in your conversion puts much more players into the business than a 5% increase in reactivation. I do, right? Is that a correct way to look at it?
I wouldn't disagree with the generalization, actually. I think that's absolutely right. And certainly when you look at the marketing investment in modern markets, it's still acquisition focused. What I would say is that it isn't true acquisition. So if you take the market dynamics in the UK, typically people have 3 to 4 wallets. All right. There's only probably about 6 million gamblers in the UK, or last time I did the stats, it might be a bit out of date. And yet, most brands will acquire multi-millions of customers every year. Not multi-millions, but multi. So there are far more gamblers out there than there are gamblers out there. If you get what I mean,
right.
You're reacquiring and cycling people around all the time. And I think the industry is moving. Accepting your point that a lot of people will focus on acquisition because that's where the spend is, but the industry is moving much more to re-engagement, and the technology is following that in the way that you can reach out to the platforms and reach those people.
Well, I think the problem with focusing exclusively on engagement is that, and I've often had this conversation with operators, is that the better you are at increasing the yield that you get from an acquired customer, the more that you can afford to invest in what are most often competitive marketplaces where you bid for that customer in the first place. So if I can afford to outbid my competitors on a PPC landscape or inside of Facebook, the reason why I can afford to do that is because I know I'm going to get more out of the average customer value over the life cycle. I'm going to keep a customer for longer. I'm going to convert more of the customers. So there's definitely, they're totally, the whole chain is linked.
100%. And you raise a good point about player values there in the marketing technology landscape, right? We work in a regulated industry, and we, over my time here, operators have become, rightfully so, much more sensitive to things like player protection. And not, the old bad practices of churn and burn are largely in the regulated industries and the regulated markets gone. And we are much more careful about managing our players. Now, that's a difficult dynamic to control. And if you overdo it, what you find is you'll have an early player value that looks great, and then you'll hit against the necessary controls that manage player behavior, and your player value drops. And then you're in the opposite of what you've just described. You're in this unvirtuous circle of bidding expensive money for customers that ultimately will not deliver a return.
Right.
So MarTech has a role to play there as well, in terms of understanding how you get player value assessment and balance it with your investment. And that dynamic that you've just described is absolutely right. The better you are at spotting more valuable players, the more you can pump back into the marketing funnel and grow the business. And if all you're doing is spending a fortune out in all of the channels and you're not converting players, then you run out of money sharpish, and yeah, you're in a nasty business cycle.
You've worked with some operators at quite a large scale. How important is the synchronization between what are often different teams at different stages in the customer life cycle to understand the relationship between player value post-acquisition to the capability of the marketing team to be able to invest? In your role, do you need to work to align these teams in a common objective, which is that they're joined at the hip?
Yeah, look, team alignment is really, really important. What I would say is that the way the MarTech landscape is evolving is probably best described like this, that 5 years ago, if you were a digital marketeer, what you would probably do is have a whole lot of spreadsheets with a whole lot of data populated by other people. You'd load them into systems and you'd execute campaigns. Then you'd go and speak to the BI team about whether or not the campaign was effective, and you'd rinse and repeat that quite long-winded cycle. The really good modern marketing platforms, and I won't endorse any, but the really good ones, the world is completely different. And what will happen is, if you've got a really good piece of customer engagement platform, is your CRM execs, your marketing execs will arrive at work on a Monday morning, they'll log into the marketing system, and that system will provide full capability. What do I mean by that? It will have real-time and batch data integrated in it to allow you to do hyper-precise segmentation. It will have all of the tools necessary for you to build the creatives that you want to build with real-time data integrations, and it'll have the ability to provision bonuses should you want to do that. There'll be a whole amount of technology allowing you to do very sophisticated automated execution, which will, and I'm sure we'll get to AI at some point in this conversation, Ash, but that will have AI built into it to manage those audience selections, and it will have a full measurement framework at the end of it, allowing to understand the full funnel of the marketing from the reach all the way down to the individual conversion event, and even down into the individual pieces of creative that you've sent out that have driven click versus not driven click. So team alignment is important, especially around things like marketing objectives and investment and all of those good things, and especially around things like player protection. But technology and marketing technology has a really big role to play in empowering marketing executives to, frankly, not have to work with other teams because they're empowered to do their job. So it's a dynamic, right? And that's the way the marketing technology stack is evolving. And the best ones know I have to cover all four elements of the discipline if I'm going to be a really good tech provider.
Now, I know you said you don't want to name names, but why not name a few? The reason I say that is because I think it's important that not necessarily as an endorsement for any one company, and at Pragmatic Solutions, we're integrated with a lot of different marketing technology providers. So I agree with your impartiality that different operators' ways of working have different preferences, and there's different vendors that may suit them best. But I think it's important to understand the companies involved so that it's clear who has what services we're talking about at these different phases in the journey. Selfishly, I want to talk about PAM platform for a second, because I think that's
Go on.
sort of a critical component in it. Pragmatic Solutions is something we approach with intention, which is we anticipate that an operator who operates on our PAM platform is going to need to connect these services, and those services are going to need to feed off of something. So they're going to need real-time data, and they're going to need granularity to that data, all sorts of information that we either is generated from the PAM platform itself or is harvested from connected services, right? So is aggregated and made available to the operator to consume in real time. Second thing is you need a technology platform that can send signal out to a third-party tool, allow that to be processed, and get a signal back, and then orchestrate an action on the back of that. So dynamically change the content that's displayed to a customer, redirect that customer to a different landing page, somehow optimize the customer's landing at the operator or some part of the customer's journey with the operator throughout that process. So with that in mind, we're not the only ones in the industry with these sort of capabilities, but it's something that we do with strong intention.
Yeah.
So then building on top of that, let's go back again to the beginning of the funnel. We're talking about tools for monitoring your customer acquisition capabilities. Can we name some of the companies some of the tooling that you might include in your tech stack at the front end of the funnel? Obviously, you're going to have affiliate technology.
Yeah.
So you'll have your performance marketing tools that you'll use there. You'll need strong analytics available. I'm going to stop leading the witness now.
No, it's fine. Sorry. So clearly, if I've understood your question correctly, Ash, I'll come to the PAM in a second because to your point, it is really important. Most of the acquisition channels now are controlled by major players.
Right. So the tech you'll be relying on will come from where you're spending the money.
Yeah, exactly. Although there is an intermediate layer. We could talk about this for an entire hour and nobody will want to listen. So let's just be quite quick on this. So there is an intermediate layer between the major platforms, which you might use to target in other media channels. So things like demand side platforms, which are interfaces to other media channels like the Sun newspaper or something like that you can execute. So having a acquisition tech stack that gets you to where you want to go in terms of where you think your addressable audience is really, really important. So major media players, major DSP players, there's more out of there than I could possibly list, but
But if you have an example, not an endorsement, just so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so DSPs typically come from most of the major marketing technology providers. Adobe have one.
Okay.
And what these do is that they integrate with
DSP for the uninitiated.
Demand side platform. What they allow you to do is buy media outside of the big platforms. So if I want to place an ad on the Sun, or if I want to place an ad on the Times, typically you will do that through what's called a demand side platform. Okay. And what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to buy this much from this channel here, and it funnels the data through and tracks it through for you. So you'll have a whole bit of a state about reaching out to your media touch points. And of course, the customer lands on your website, and there's really two kinds of data, simplistically, that you're going to collect as you go through that to influence your marketing. The first is the behavioral analytics. Where did they land? How long did they dwell for? Where did they go next? That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, almost always, they are from one or two of the third parties, brands like Telium or brands like Google Analytics is a big one. Adobe Analytics is another one. They are tracking that website behavioral data. And you will need that for ultimately to do some of the things like the personalizations. And that will track a whole load of data that will inform you about where the traffic came from and what they did. But beneath that then is the core of the gaming platform, which is the PAM. And that can have a huge influence on your ability to do decent marketing. Because the way that you track and align that data and make it available to your point, so how quickly you convert that and how quick you can track the channel that came through and feed it back out into, for example, the affiliate platforms, the income access of these that you've talked about, will have an influence on your success or otherwise to market. And I think one of the things you look for in your PAM platform, frankly, is its ability to pass information out into your marketing activation plan. So, and it's a two-way thing. I'll come back to that. Sorry, as I say, you can talk about this for years. So back to the PAM, there is its ability to send information out. How fast does it do it? Is it a modern Kafka Scat with a real-time events bus that comes out into your CRM system for activation? How rich is that information in terms of its completeness? Do we have deposit events? Do we have withdrawal events? Do we have bet placement? What does it have about bet placement events? All that good stuff will give you a huge ability to market effectively. And that's core in the PAM capability. The other bit is its ability to ingest.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I mean by that? A modern CRM platform might make a decision that it's got to give Ash a bonus. You can't have teams having to set that up before they've decided that Ash wants a bonus, because that slows the whole thing down. So the ability for your PAM platform to ingest and execute on customer propositions across gaming and sports will be an important factor in your marketing tech.
100%.
Yeah, and finally, and I have to, all the way through this, you have to remember we're a regulated market, and the player protection element of your marketing journey will be really important. So your PAM is core to that. Recognition and sharing of data about exclusions, about risk profiles, about all of that kind of stuff has to be an integrated part of your marketing stack, because the last thing anybody wants to do is market to a player who's at risk or has been excluded, or all those kind of things. Players need protection, and the PAM will have a role to play in regulating that.
Well, player protection is the primary reason, but it's just that investment to target customers that are not suitable for play. So you talked about regulated markets. So two things come to mind there. In regulated markets, you have App Store, native app distribution capability.
Yeah.
How does that change the acquisition funnel? Because until now, you've been talking about players hitting your landing page or your website.
Yeah.
Is attribution a problem, or is there other marketing technology that you need to integrate when it comes to App Store acquisition? Is one, and then two-part question. The conversion funnel for that customer has become a lot more friction laden with intrusive ID verification. I say intrusive ultimately for customer protection, but for many customers, they may not understand why they're being asked for information during an onboarding journey or during a first deposit journey.
Yeah.
And this can lead to drop-offs. And I think operators who are doing a good job are observing those funnels and optimizing them. So what sort of marketing technology role does it have to play? And so two parts, acquisition and attribution through the App Store native app model, and then through the customer registration and the KYC process.
Two questions. So the first, you've talked about App Store, and actually it leads to something that I hadn't talked about yet in terms of marketing funnel, and is important we get back to, which is search engine optimization and how visible your site is to web crawlers. But specifically on app stores, there is obviously a discipline with app stores. You can like anywhere else, you can pay. You can pay to sponsor your ad up to the top of it.
Yeah.
But equally, you have to optimize your content on the App Store. People call it ASO, App Store Optimization. And presenting your ad in the App Store is like any other channel. Make it relevant, make the creative sing, make it clear what your product is, drive higher product ratings. That's a discipline of MarTech that you'll do to make sure you're getting your ratings right, and you'll build journeys around that. But you've asked the question about attribution, and I think attribution is increasingly challenging in a data privacy world. But I do think marketers over-index on how important it is. So if you take the apps...
Over-index?
Yeah. Because, and I'll tell you why. Marketing at the end of it is statistics, all right? You can... Over time, then the older you get in this industry, the more you realize that this isn't deterministic, it's probabilistic. I don't know how many ads I've got to show somebody to convert them. It might be 1, it might be 2, it might be 20. And Apple have, in the old days, what used to happen was you click on the ad, it would convert, you get that conversion event in real time. You're brilliant, I can really optimize this. Nowadays, through technology like SCAD Network, you only get a aggregated view of that data when you've got over a certain number of conversions, and it comes late, and you use a technique called postback, so you're posting it a couple of days later. And initially, a lot of marketers, it's broken, I can't possibly do this. The reality is, if you understand that marketing is just statistics and probabilistic, the postback information is enough. Now, it limits some elements in some applications, but generally speaking, if you've got SCAD Network working and you're getting the right statistics in a privacy-safe environment, you can achieve pretty much the same marketing outcomes. There's just a step in the middle to understand in terms of how you do that postback activity versus in the past where you just got the straight addressable event.
Interesting. Okay.
And then what was your second part?
Second part of the question was like, how has the conversion funnel changed as a result of operating in regulated markets, and how does an effective marketing team understand the impact on the customer through a KYC journey and mitigate the impact? Look to optimize that funnel.
Yeah, I mean, again, a bit like the data privacy and attribution, the initial perception of this for marketing teams was this is bad for business. This is really difficult. And, putting player protection in does, to your point exactly, introduce challenges in the funnel. From a MarTech point of view, the way you mitigate that is ultimately about recognition and speed and agility in that journey. So it may be, for example, you will bring people straight through, and as they're registering their credit card, for example, you will risk score them, and you'll immediately recognize these are customers that I don't want. So if you think about that and you won't connect them, and from a marketing point of view, you need to make sure you've accounted for that in your attribution. So if you're putting your attribution pre that check and going, that was successful, and the check comes in afterwards and discounts people, then you are massively overvaluing your marketing, because you might just be connecting people that never make business.
Right.
The other part of it from a similar tech, from a MarTech point of view, is you can actually help customers through that journey. So if you're putting a customer on after £50 of net deposits, I need to intervene and I need to ask them to provide more source of funds documentation to protect them, that's fine. Marketers have a role to play to smooth that journey. So conceptually, it might be, okay, if I'm going to do a source of funds at 50, at 25, when they've got to £25, I'm going to tell them, I'm going to say, look, we like to protect our players. Expecting a couple of weeks, we might ask you for documentation. This is just to protect you. Be ready. And you will increase that journey frequency as they approach that net deposit limit to make sure that they're prepared for that.
Right.
Frankly, what feels sometimes like a rude interaction to their play. So if you think about how you execute that, it's almost a job of MarTech. It's recognizing everything you just described. So the PAM provides the net deposit position. Then the MarTech knows whether or not this customer is at risk or not. And then it will start to deploy those journeys. And those journeys will be deployed in a frequency cap way. So you don't, all of that good stuff. So the player protection has informed the way we need to do MarTech and changed the way we need to do attribution. But again, as long as the playing field is level and all operators are regulated the same way, it becomes a competitive advantage. The better you get at that, the more player value you get, the more engaged customers you'll get. So,
what do you find today is the most effective channel to communicate with the customer?
Oh, that is just, if you think, marketing really is about two things in the digital space. The first is the customer, which is, who are you? Who is Ash? What does he like? And, are you a football fan? Are you a Formula One fan? Do you like casino slots? Do you like casino spins? So, and that will be very channel dependent. All right. There's, casino is much more prevalent in some of the sort of more short attention span type channels than it is in, sports, where you'll be going somewhere else, like, I don't know, Lab Bible or whatever. So there is an element of who you are as an individual that influences the channel you should put it in, but there is also a huge element of your context. So posting out an email can be an incredibly effective way to capture incremental sales if you post that email at the right time and put the right content in it. But it's largely irrelevant if I say something that's completely irrelevant to you. If I email you, if you're a Man United fan and I email you on Friday to say Man United are playing, pointless, frankly. And the betting industry does a lot of that. If, and I'm sorry to reuse the example, I communicate you with a push notification with a simple, super simple journey to place that next bet that is contextually relevant, that is the best channel by a mile, because the conversion journey is so simple. So it's about customer, and it's 100% about context, and that's the challenge.
It's a really good point, because as I asked you the question, I was thinking about, it comes from a place of my own behavior, thinking about what I respond to. And it actually depends on the product, because let's say it's a hotel I've stayed at before during the Christmas holiday season, let's say, and they're retargeting me this year thinking maybe I'm coming back to Madrid or London, wherever.
Yeah.
Email's not a bad way to reach me. Because at the end of my day, I might dig into my personal emails. I might see something that is rich media, right?
Yeah.
A good glossy photograph of the hotel, description of what they offer is, they could set the stage for why I might respond to that offer.
Yeah.
And it's not time sensitive. I've got weeks to make those sort of decisions. Other products that I use, let's say Revolut, push notification if it has anything to do with movement on something that I've got related to my account or investments or anything there, your bank, you expect it to be real time. You expect it to be a short message, and you expect it to have an immediate response action link to it. I can click it and it'll take me right to what is being offered. So I think it's fair to say the right channel for the right type of message.
Yeah.
But in this industry, real time is critically important, and your capabilities to retarget customers in real time, I think, have a major role to play. I've had conversations before from fellow marketeers that have told me of the importance of identifying a customer who's had a bad session and reaching them. I say bad session in terms of value versus what they've invested in time and money into play in that session. So maybe let's talk about that real-time marketing channel. If you have an inference that you've gathered from one of your insight platforms, what do you look to be able to do from marketing technology to be able to reach the customer and maybe dynamically change the content that they see or the offer that they're being given?
Yeah.
And what sort of tooling is involved there?
Really good question. And don't let me forget to come back to the fact that in this industry, we have a unique challenge that the thing I might want to sell is only there for half an hour.
Right.
And then it's gone. All right. So you've got to coordinate that. So look, I've used a sports example, so let's use a casino example. And the question is, what technology is involved? So the first thing is really the identification of the audience that you want to get that message to. Because what you don't want to do is just be blanket push notifications. So you've given a good example there of, it might have been a particularly problematic session, or they might be jumping around the app in a particular way that is an indicator of the fact that they might be going or whatever. So there's a technology that collects the data, processes and aggregates the data that allows you to identify them as part of an audience that you want to get to. But that's really, if I'm being brutally honest, the easy part of the problem.
Why easy? Because there's mature technology available today that you can license from any number.
Yeah, and at the end of it, it's just collecting some data. Yeah. All right. So, and even if you're going to be sophisticated about building a model within that to say, actually, this is a churn. I've recognized a churning event from Ash. He's just done 20 bad spins. I need to intervene. It's still just collecting the data and a simple model. The much harder bit is, okay, so having got this thing, what do I say to Ash? And if you're not presenting relevant content back, so as an example, if you've just had 10 losing spins on a slot, do you really want to play on that slot again? I'm on a bad session. Emotionally, I'm against this slot. So you need to be able to very, very quickly, and I'm talking microseconds, assemble a piece of creative that is going to be converting and interesting to that individual. And there's a number of facets in that. You might choose, if you're in a casino, you might go, what games also feature fish, or as simple as that, or it could be what's a trending game at the moment, or it could be
similar volatility,
all that kind of thing. Yeah. So you're making decisions about what games to recommend. Now, if you try and do that on rules based, it becomes very dry very quickly and very repetitive to the customer. So you are then having to interject into that journey a real-time recommendations model. So you need to know, Ash has just done his 9 losing spins. He wants to change a game. What game does he want to do? And so you've got a recommendation in the moment, which can be trained, and then you've got to solve that with the creative. So you have to have the scraping technology to be able to render that experience live and in real time. You can't pre-populate hundreds of thousands of permutations of recommendation and then call it.
And I guess you want to check if he's still in session in app, where you could do a push notification inside the app.
Yeah,
you'd want to know that channel is primary channel now. If he's closed the session, is SMS or email better?
Yeah. So and you'll build
channel decisions.
Exactly. So you'll build different journeys and MarTech needs to be able to cope for this. You will build sequenced, organized journeys that allow you to do the bits that you and I have just said, which is probably in app, but then recognize didn't engage Ash. How long after do I re-engage him, and on what channel? Is it a push notification? Well, only if he's got it enabled. If he's not, is it an SMS? Well, it's expensive in interverses and it's not worth it. He's not a high-value customer, so don't do SMS. Let's get him on an email, and we know his emails. He typically reads his emails at 10, so let's send it at 5 to 10. So what you're talking about there really is a set of audiencing technology. Then it's a set of propositioning technology, which is a combination, as I've said before, of bonusing and creative. And within that creative technology, it's the dynamic flexibility and the data integrations that allow you to do it. Then we've just talked about an example of execution scheduling. So where are they in their journey? Are they live in an app at the moment, or have they left? So I've got the execution scheduling bit. And around all of that, you've got to measure it. So every piece of creative in that journey needs tagging and collecting. And you also need to have put in place mechanics, if you want to evaluate the success or otherwise of that. So things like control groups, dynamic control groups, or things that need to be in the journey, because reference what I said 10 minutes ago, marketing is just statistics. So you need to apply the analysis that says, did that work? Did that make Ash play more, or did it piss him off and make him play less?
I guess there's two big costs to the operator. One is the acquisition cost of the player in the first place. Second would be bonusing cost.
Yeah.
So how can you use marketing technology to most efficiently attribute bonus where you want to bonus the player that's going to have the desired response from that, and you don't want to issue bonuses to a player who's otherwise, not in need of one, is having a good experience, is enjoying a profitable session.
Yeah.
Not that they never will be eligible for a bonus, but you might want to preserve that for a day that isn't going as well for them, where you want to re-engage them. And so some tech is involved there.
Yeah, great question. And I need to be slightly careful that I don't describe all tech as marketing tech. So you've asked a really, really good data-based question there, and let's address it, because it's really important. And I think you can describe the way this has evolved over time. Historically, people just wanged out bonuses, frankly, and they'd look at the campaign and whether or not. Nowadays, people, or good operators, or probably average operators, are good at maximizing yields in terms of macro level factors like bonus to stake ratios or bonus to NGR ratios, and they will top that out at certain levels to avoid over bonusing. That approach is good, and it will save you money, but you're still wasting a lot of money. So, and where are you wasting that money? To your point, giving players bonuses that just didn't need it. They might be below a certain bonus to stake ratio, but they may be non-bonus responsive, and you're wasting your money anyway. And all you're doing is giving bonuses away to support a bet that would have been made anyway, i.e. there's no incrementality. So in the assessment of that economics, you need to do really two things. First is you've got to have a model that is determining, relative to the customer, do they need a bonus or not? Are they regularly active? And even though their bonus to stake ratio is within comfortable bounds or below where it should be, they're still active. And everything that indicates me about that customer is they're still active. You don't need to bonus. But the other one is understanding the impact of that bonus. And, again, back to the evolution, in the olden days, the impact of that bonus was, frankly, did the customer redeem it or not? That's not really the question nowadays. The question is, did that bonus deliver future economic value for the business? All right. Did
it drive the activity that it was intended to?
Did the addition of £5 bonus give me more than £3 back? I won't go into why it's £3, but you just got to make sure you are driving incrementality over the cash you've given away, and that's quite sophisticated. These are problems of data and modelling, really, rather than MarTech historically. But of course, the bonus cost is seen as a marketing cost, so you need to be all over it.
So, what does your squad look like in order to do this effectively? What do you need in terms of a team?
And I think it's a really good question. Again, it's evolving. All right. 10 years ago, you had to have a BI team, you had to have a decision science team, you had to have a creative team banging out loads of creatives, you had to have people doing audience execution, you had to, lots and lots of teams, because the job was very, very labor intensive. If you roll that forward to certainly some elements of platform capability nowadays, if you really get it right, you've got a set of engineers that set up and maintain your platform, that make sure the data infrastructure works, that make sure all the platforms are working, all that kind of thing. And then you have a set of marketeers who are full funnel marketeers and understand every element of audience trafficking, of what makes a good proposition. They're making their own creatives, they're awarding their own bonuses. They've got the tools to execute it automatically, and they've got the tools to measure it. Now, we are not, as an industry, there yet, but we are getting there. And I have seen implementations of MarTech capability where what I've just described is true. You are logging into one system on a Monday morning, and it will provide that full execution. Still loads of channel integrations to go, but we are not far away from that. And that
So
includes...
what is changing is the description of the role of the marketeer. You now need to be comfortable with working the tools yourself, and the plumbing will be installed by your technical team, but once it's installed, there's more that you can do as the marketeer in the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think you're absolutely right. You know, for a long time in the gambling industry, we'd say we were employing marketeers. We weren't. We were employing people who configured systems and passed spreadsheets around, and it was a pretty horrible job. I think, you know, now we are if you've got your MarTech right, you are employing marketeers, because it's very, very quick to set up and execute a campaign. And what you start to do is obsess about conversion journeys, which is what you want your marketing people to do. Conversion journeys, efficiency and profitability. And in a way, with the advent of AI, we're going to skip a step, because AI is going to be deployed in such a way that you probably will buy that off the shelf as part of the MarTech stack, and you will be deploying AI. And I've seen that happen. Simplistically, AI in terms of smart management of control groups, so you don't make it too big and waste money. But even more sophisticated, CRM execs can deploy AI in choosing which campaign to choose for a customer. You would pick 5 and you'll say, go for it. And the machine over time will learn which is the right one for the right customer cohort, and you'll just be driving efficiency through that. So that kind of stuff, the application of AI is happening really very quickly within the industry, and it's across the whole funnel.
It's interesting to hear you put it that way, because it's something we've been thinking a lot about. My view is that our role as the PAM is not to be the developer of the AI models, because each week I'm approached by companies who purport to be the new expert in next best offer or future value predictions or RG monitoring. What we want to do as a PAM is be able to connect to and provide the information so that those platforms can produce an insight, and then be able to respond to the insight that they've this player, this offer now. It sounds like you're of the same opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think I question more and more the value of doing this. You are not going to get a competitive advantage by being the best AI modeler, because it's just becoming as commoditized as anything else. Right. You will get a competitive advantage from having a highly efficient PAM that shares data really efficiently and connects really easily. That's where you want to play. You can buy them off the shelf.
When you talk me through a typical day for you, when you come into the office, what do you look at? What do you open up and gives you a picture of how the day's trading or the night's trading has been, and how your campaigns are working? What do you spend your time in? What are you looking at?
I mean, I'll try and answer it not just about me, because if I said what my day looked like, it'd be messy sometimes. But it depends on your layer of the organization.
An effective person in your position.
Yeah, well, let me be even more general, if I may, actually. So what you're looking for ideally, as I said, at the very, more junior, less experienced levels of the organization, if I can put it that way, you really want your marketing execs to be focusing on doing a job of marketing. So you're doing everything you can from a tech perspective to make their job as quick and as efficient as possible, to make sure the campaigns are running. The more senior you get to an organization, the less and less you are bothered about individual execution, and the more and more you are bothered about the efficiency of your portfolio of activities. The interplay between channels, the interplay between retention and activation, the intervention between player value. So most of my day, to be honest, is obsessing about things like that at the macroeconomic level performance than it is about the detailed. However, the other part of my day, frankly, is obsessing about MarTech, which is, right, what do we need to do next? What's our roadmap of capability? What's going to give us the most bang for buck? Because it's an arms race, and the arms race is cycle time is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And, probably, and we haven't talked about SEO yet, but probably no better example than what's happened with, ChatGPT and Google, and the way their search engines work is destroying some businesses, like over the course of a couple of months, as their site visibility and brand visibility disappears off a cliff, and it's massively promoting other businesses.
Right. And
your platform has a huge role to play in that, in terms of its technical visibility to what used to be search engines and is now large language models. You've got to be up there in that space to rank nowadays. So, that is becoming an obsession about how I integrate with that. And that's what I mean about my day. If I just focus on the numbers, then I'll get fired. I have to focus on the numbers, and I have to focus on the marketing tech capability that's going to keep pace with developments in the world.
So looking forward, where do you see opportunity for innovation that would make your capabilities stronger? Or who do you see already moving in that space that gets you excited about what you might be capable of in 2026?
Yeah, I think part of what is exciting, and I say this after years of world weariness, is that the picture I've just described of the intelligent marketeer isn't BS anymore. It's becoming a reality. That in and of itself is exciting, to be working in an industry where you can actually talk about something really cool. But one of the reasons I love the industry is that it can be very difficult to know what is in 2026 and 2027. Now, it's
right.
Back to the very start of this conversation. It sort of depends where you are in your journey about what you should be innovating in 2026, 2027. But if you are not at the forefront of implementing the latest wave of AI, it'll be a bit like if you're not at the forefront of when the internet came around. And there's been years of sort of waves of stuff, some of which have been hyperbole and some which haven't. From a marketing point of view, the adoption of AI across your entire marketing process is where all the innovation is going to be in 2026 and 2027.
Okay, when you say the entire process, you mean from copywriting, creative development?
I mean, even
through to data analysis, targeting,
everything. All right. So the way that you find customers in the platforms will start to be, and is already massively influenced by AI. And to be fair to people like Meta, has been for years, right? When Meta closed their door 5 or 6 years ago and made it into a walled garden platform, they'd already adopted AI, and those models were becoming self-learning a long time ago. So AI is not a new thing in the marketing industry, but the way you target data is influenced by AI. The way you build, to your point, your creatives, all right, your cycle time of building a new creative must be really short, and you will use AI to write copy, and you will use AI to regulate copy, and you will use AI to do all of those things. The execution, which I briefly referenced, will start to become by AI. Which campaign should I send out to Ash? It's not a human decision anymore. It's about conversion and micro segments and a constantly optimizing algo that says this is the right campaign to send out. And the way you measure it, if you're not using statistical machine learning models to constantly adapt the measurement of your campaigns, you're not doing it right. So 2026, 2027, I'm sorry to be a bit cliched about it, but it will be about AI across your entire marketing process.
But okay, so there's one thing I was thinking about that I was curious to ask you, because I think it's easy to go down a path where everything is technology and data, and forget the emotion side of it, forget the brand building. How do you balance, and has the balance changed between what an operator should be investing? The 100% trackability and auditability of completely end-to-end digital campaigns with strong partners like Meta that can give you the top of the funnel tooling to make your campaign optimized can be an addiction, I imagine, from a marketeer's perspective, because that's what you ultimately want, is everything to be trackable and optimizable. But then you wouldn't do any television, you wouldn't do any brand building, you wouldn't do any outdoor, you wouldn't host events maybe. How do you balance that? Do you think there's still as strong a place? Is it the preserve of large-scale operators? Is there a certain scale where you should save that investment for later stage in your business? Or would you say it's actually more important up front in building a brand that you have a parallel strategy for things that aren't trackable, and you just got to live with that?
Yeah, look, I think if I painted a picture that brand is not important, I really want to disabuse anyone of that notion. So a couple of things you've said about the march away from television towards digital. Brand is just as important in digital as is in television. That march is really about following the eyeballs. People are spending more time on digital. It affords marketers opportunities, but at the core of it is brand. And if we stick to, strong people in the gaming industry you want in, brands like Paddy Power exist on an extremely strong brand. All right, people know exactly what they stand for. They've persisted like that for years, and they do. I've never worked for them. Maybe I was in that. Yeah, maybe. But they have an incredibly strong view of what their brand is, what it needs to be. This mischievous, and it resonates.
But these are clicks. That's a brand that was built in a different time, though. I mean, if you were building Paddy Power today, you'd probably use different strategies to build the brand than they did to get to where they are today. Is
Let's
that a fair statement, or you disagree?
No, I disagree. Like, so if you take, things that didn't exist, I was taking out things like Lab Bible, all right? Lab Bible is a brand with a content strategy, and when you go to Lab Bible, you know what you're getting, all right? Whether it's Sports Bible, Lab Bible, or any number of properties, and you are seeing things grow out of nowhere that are ultimately brand plays, and so. And I'll be candid, I'm rubbish at that sort of thing. I find it mysterious, but there are other people in this world who are absolutely brilliant at it. And if you just go, it'll be fine, I'll get there and people will convert, you're wrong. What you're doing, if your brand is bad and your brand perception is bad, is basically committing yourself to spending far more marketing money than you need to do. Now, Apple don't do performance media.
Good point.
All right. And is there, well, I'm an Apple fanboy, obviously, but is their tech nowadays materially better than all the other stuff? Well, you can have nerdy arguments about it, but fundamentally, Apple is about brand. They don't need to do performance marketing. They just build a shop and everybody loves it. And, there are brands like Nike, like Apple, who create this emotional connection that is worth fortunes in reduced marketing spend. Tesla don't do any brand marketing at all. Every now and then they launch a car and a rocket.
So all the capabilities of what you can do with performance marketing and the analysis and the real-time targeting of campaigns is only to create greater efficiencies across the business that allows you to also make investments in things that you just have to have calculated faith. Let's say you hire the right people, have a good strategy behind it, but your brand will convert better if your brand has an identity, and that identity may not be created through purely digital marketing.
Yeah, and if we want a conversation about brand,
for another day.
Yeah, for another guy and another person. It's not my area of expertise, actually.
Okay. If there was some fundamentals, so just a quick hot take here.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur with a growing gaming business, and I want to quickly audit, when I go in, do I have the right capabilities in terms of digital marketing, and do I have the right tooling? Is there any must-haves that you'd say, as you would enter a business tomorrow, the first things you would make sure are installed?
So if I was
not looking for brands, because
I get it. So I think if I take your question literally, if I was an entrepreneur going and I bought a business and I wanted to understand whether or not they had a good MarTech stack, I would ask them two questions. One, what's your marketing return on investment? And two, why? If you don't understand the first question, then your MarTech measurement framework is fundamentally broken. Your attribution will be wrong, or your channel integrations will be wrong, or anything like that. So if you can't answer that question efficiently, then you're way down the bottom of the marketing maturity curve. You don't understand where you're making your money, then start there. The second question I asked was why is that the best channel? And that will reveal where you are in terms of your understanding of the creative elements and conversion, understanding of your media placement, understanding of how you're building those journeys. And so the more sophisticated answers you can give to those questions would tell an entrepreneur how good or not you are at marketing. In terms of evaluating the technology stack against harder KPIs, as I said earlier, it just depends where you are. If you're an entrepreneur who's bought a big brand, you'll want to focus on the retention as much as the acquisition. If you're starting out from scratch, don't worry about all the really sophisticated CRM stuff to start with. Work on the technical.
Do you think this industry leads in this regard?
Yeah,
definitely.
And that's why I work in it. I'm not a big casino player, I'm not a big sports bettor. I do both, but to a relatively small degree. This industry leads in this because of two things, really. First is the brutal competitiveness of it. There is a negative cost to switch in this industry. You are permanently incentivized to go find another brand. And there are hundreds of them out there. There aren't many industries where that's the case. There is always a hassle factor of changing your electricity bill or changing your car insurance or buying a new car. There is zero hassle factor in this industry. So the white heat of competition is strong, and that focuses the mind. The second is the transactional frequency. All right. You only renew your car subscriptions once a year. You only resubscribe to Sky once a year, pay your gas once a year, might go clothes shopping once a week. gambling and betting, you can have tens, if not hundreds of interactions a day with your customers. And that opens up a whole set of capabilities that you very rarely get exposed to. There's only a few other industries like financial services. You mentioned Revolut, they have that. Mobile phone companies used to say that, not really true anymore. Obviously, internet providers have that degree of interaction. But really, outside of the media providers, real money gaming is one of the places where it's at. You've just got that regular interaction.
I've always said from a marketing perspective, in baseball, the next batter who's going to step up to hit, he'll often have two bats in his hand that he's swinging, so that when it's his turn up to bat, he drops one and everything feels lighter.
Yeah.
And I think if you've cut your teeth in this industry in marketing, you take it anywhere else, you're dropping a bat, and it would be a degree.
I'm 13 years now in the industry, and I keep thinking, maybe I should do something else. But every time I think about it, I go, where would I go? And I go, no, I'll just stay here.
Well, we're glad to have you here,
Adam,
and I really appreciated talking with you. There's more that we can dig into, so I hope we have a chance to do this again. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great to see you.